They tell us enslaved people were passive, that they accepted their fate, that they waited quietly for freedom to be given. But that story is a lie. Because resistance did not begin after slavery was established. Resistance began the moment freedom was threatened. The moment chains touched human skin. The moment Africans understood that this system was meant to erase them. From the very first ships crossing the Atlantic, resistance was already alive. Africans fought back on the shores before capture. They resisted in the holds of ships packed into darkness, surrounded by death. Some refused to eat, choosing starvation over submission. Some broke restraints and attacked their captors. Some leapt into the ocean, preferring death to bondage. This was not despair. This was control over one's own body. This was defiance in its purest form. When enslaved Africans arrived in the colonies, they did not arrive empty. They did not arrive broken. They arrived with memory, with knowledge, with political awareness, with lived experience of societies where slavery was not natural, permanent, or racial. They understood immediately what this system was trying to do, and they understood it had to be resisted. Plantations depended on absolute obedience. Every crop, every profit, every expansion relied on total control of human labor. But obedience was never complete. Work slowed intentionally. Tools were damaged quietly. Animals were poisoned. Seeds were ruined. Fires destroyed crops under cover of night. These were not accidents. They were strategies. Resistance did not always announce itself. Sometimes it looked like survival. Sometimes it looked like delay. Sometimes it looked like silence. Enslaved. People pretended not to understand commands. They feigned illness. They worked just hard enough to avoid punishment and no more. They preserved strength for something else. Every stolen moment of rest was resistance. Every preserved breath was rebellion. Families resisted by loving one another in a system designed to break them apart. Parents resisted by teaching children who they were. Elders resisted by remembering Africa and refusing to let it disappear. Names survived, rhythms survived, ways of speaking survived, culture lived even when it was forbidden, and escape was always present. Not as a dream, but as a plan. People ran. They ran through forests and swamps. They ran into mountains and hidden terrain. They ran chased by dogs and armed men. They ran knowing capture meant torture, mutilation, or death. They ran anyway. Some escapees formed Maroon communities. These were not temporary camps. They were organized societies. They farmed land. They built defenses. They practiced African traditions openly. They fought colonial forces and survived for years, sometimes decades. Maroon communities proved something the system could not allow, that enslaved people could govern themselves, that they could defend freedom, that they did not need masters. This truth terrified colonial authorities because freedom spreads and hope multiplies. Rebellions followed, small at first, then larger. More coordinated enslaved Africans planned in secret. They met under the cover of religion. They used music to communicate. Drums carried messages across distances. Songs hid instructions in plain language. Language itself became a weapon. One of the earliest uprisings occurred before America even existed as a nation. Enslaved Africans rose against their captors, destroying property, attacking overseers, and attempting mass escape. Many were killed. Many were punished publicly, but the message was delivered. Bondage would never be accepted quietly. Each act of resistance forced the system to respond, and the response was always violence. Punishments grew harsher, laws became stricter, surveillance expanded. Slave patrols were created to hunt escapees, to terrorize enslaved communities, to enforce obedience through fear. This was the beginning of organized policing in America, not to protect people, but to protect property. Human property. Families were punished together. Public executions were staged as warnings. Bodies were displayed to instill terror. But fear never fully worked because resistance did not stop. Enslaved, women resisted in ways history often refuses to name. They hid food. They delayed labor through illness and pregnancy. They protected children from violence when possible. They passed down knowledge. They preserved culture. They turned motherhood into resistance. They raised children to remember they were human, not property. Faith became a shield, but not the faith enslavers intended. African spirituality merged with Christianity. Biblical stories were reinterpreted. Moses became a symbol. Exodus became a promise. Spirituals carried coded messages. Songs spoke of escape routes, of safe places, of justice. Beyond this world, religion became a language of resistance, and belief became something that could not be whipped away. The system responded by tightening control again. More laws, more bans, more restrictions on movement, speech, and assembly. But every new law revealed the truth. A system that must constantly punish is a system under threat. Slavery survived only through violence. Without force, it collapsed. And resistance exposed that weakness over and over again. Even failed rebellions succeeded in one way. They proved enslaved people were never passive, never broken, never waiting to be saved. They were fighting, with bodies, with minds, with culture, with memory. Resistance did not end slavery, but it made slavery unstable. It shaped laws, it shaped fear. It shaped the future because every act of resistance carried the same truth. Freedom is natural. Bondage is not. In the next episode, we explore how faith, culture, and spirituality became tools of survival, how identity endured even under oppression, and how a people refused to disappear. If you want to understand Black America not as victims, but as survivors, fighters, and builders, subscribe now. Because the story of resistance is the story of Black America itself.